We work hard, save up, and spend potentially thousands of dollars for a week on a multi-million-dollar property that caused destruction of the natural environment, displacement of locals, and a classist exclusivity complex. That is not travel. That is another form of mindless consumerism parading as the illusion of exploring the world. You're not exploring the world, you're exploiting the world. Hey y'all, it's Sarah Maria. Welcome back to my channel where we break down the problem of consumerism and its intersection with other systems of oppression, taking a deep dive into how we can be more conscious consumers and people in general. I have seen something that I can't unsee. Something that used to be so normal to me that I now see as an irresponsible and borderline violent use of privilege, and that is luxury travel. In one of my last videos, we talked all about the luxury aesthetic and the obsession with looking and being wealthy that's ultimately tied to oppressive class elitism. In this video, we're exploring one aspect of the luxury aesthetic: the huge private villas and 5-star resorts with private beach access, 5 pools and 2 hot tubs. I'm sure we've all seen it online, on social media, or even done the luxury travel thing in our own personal lives. For the middle, upper class, and obviously the ultra wealthy, this type of vacationing, this type of travel has become so normal and serves as an aspirational goal for many people. But what exactly are we supporting when we spend our money to vacation like this? What looks and feels like paradise from one perspective is quite the opposite from a different perspective. The local population that gets a front row seat to watch their land, their home, turn into a foreigner's paradise has a very different experience of this.
We just implemented the new system this last Monday. It's corporate policy to offer our clients a cashless environment.
Can I pay you later? But please, I knew the original owner.
I'm sorry.
Tranquilo, vamos. Seguimos aquí.
Sí, seguimos aquí.
While travel as a concept is a beautiful experience for expanding your awareness of other cultures and also expanding your awareness of your own place in the world, it takes a conscious effort to make sure we're not traveling in a way that is exploitative of the lands and the people whose home we're traveling to. But of those that have the means to travel, how many are actually making this conscious effort? In my opinion, not enough. As long as the demand for this luxury type of travel is there, property developers and realtors will continue to exploit beautiful places for profit and with little regard for the people who live there. Let's get into it. Some of the most frequented tropical travel destinations include cities like Santorini, Bali, Cancun, and beautiful islands like Puerto Rico and Jamaica, just to name a few. People flock there for their warm weather, beautiful beaches, and a plethora of luxury villas and resorts to choose from. Those with the means to do so even seek out property ownership in these places, potentially buying a multi-million-dollar home right on the beach or an eco lodge up in the rainforest, somewhere they can go on vacation or rent out for profit when they're not there. Not only is this luxury type of real estate almost always owned and operated by people that don't live there, it also caters to people that don't live there. The problem is that there are people that live there that, 1, are excluded from accessing these luxuries, and 2, experience the negative effects of this development. Over-tourism, destruction of the environment, gentrification, and the washing out of their culture. One of the most glaring examples of exploitative travel can be seen in Puerto Rico. Being a U.S. territory, it more readily gets taken advantage of by wealthy mainland Americans who have easier access to property ownership and obviously no barriers to citizenship. According to a study by the Department of Economic Development and Commerce, about 4,500 individuals and businesses relocated from the mainland US to Puerto Rico from 2012 to 2019. This number has only continued to rise. Since 2012, the Puerto Rican government has offered wealthy mainland Americans a rare deal: move to Puerto Rico and pay no taxes on interest, dividends, capital gains, or crypto assets, all while living on a beautiful island in the Caribbean and maintaining their U.S. citizenship. This was formally carried out by Act 22, which was passed by the government with the intent to encourage wealthy taxpayers to relocate to Puerto Rico to increase economic activity, investments in real estate, and other services on the island. So Americans can move to Puerto Rico or move their businesses to Puerto Rico and apply for an Act 22 decree, which, if they're approved, will give them total tax exemption. If they purchase a house there within 2 years, spend at least 6 months each year living there, and contribute at least $10,000 annually to a local nonprofit. Code Section 933, a tax code provision, also exempts these individuals from having to pay U.S. federal income tax on any income derived from sources within Puerto Rico. So you can see how for wealthy business owners this could be very attractive, as it gives them a way to preserve and grow their wealth more easily. But with the influx of wealthy outsiders comes an increase in property prices on the island and an overall increase in cost of living. Investors come in and buy properties, sometimes entire blocks. They remodel them and then sell them or rent them out at substantially higher prices, which locals simply can't afford. The program director at human rights org called El Puente says, one of the biggest challenges to renting is that prices keep going up, but the salary and the power of people to buy and rent houses stays the same. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income in Puerto Rico in 2023 dollars was $25,000, and 39.6% of the population lives in poverty. Meanwhile, according to Zillow, the median price of a home in San Juan, the capital city, is $887,000. And there are countless private luxury villas, condos, and apartments for rent on platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo, while actual Puerto Ricans have an increasingly difficult time finding affordable housing for themselves. Some U.S. representatives are backing a resolution against Act 22, claiming that it's disrupting the island's housing market and encouraging tax evasion by wealthy Americans. The resolution states that the influx of wealthy Americans seeking tax breaks has oversaturated the housing market, driving up housing prices and reducing availability for long-term residents. Americans seeking a tax shelter in Puerto Rico contributed to a 600% increase in rent prices from July 2022 to September 2023. All of this has resulted in mass displacement of Puerto Ricans who have been pushed out by the lack of employment opportunity and lack of affordable housing. The past 5 years have seen the most migration out of Puerto Rico since the end of World War II. Travel-induced gentrification in Puerto Rico may be a newer phenomenon, but the history of exploitation by the mainland US has been in the works for a long time. Historically, the island was always an agriculture-based economy, a place for sugarcane and tobacco to be harvested and exported to America and to Europe. Due to several reasons that we won't go into right now, the economy and society started to crumble, and so the US government began a series of economic reforms intended to transform the Puerto Rican economy from agricultural to industrial, and this was called Operation Bootstrap. Surprise, surprise, all of these economic reforms ended up benefiting wealthy American business owners much more than the actual Puerto Rican population. How? Well, in the same exact manner that we're seeing today. These reforms were centered around giving corporations incentives to move production to the island in the form of tax advantages and other government subsidies. The Industrial Incentives Act of 1947 eliminated all corporate taxes for private and foreign investments for a 10-year period. So no taxes on property devoted to industrialization, like factories, for example, and no income tax on income gained from industrial development. In the 90s, there was another provision to the U.S. tax code called Section 936, which allowed U.S. corporations to completely evade federal income taxes for any subsidiary companies that were based in Puerto Rico. So U.S. companies would transfer the manufacturing of lucrative products to factories in Puerto Rico, where they could manufacture the products more cheaply due to taking advantage of the weaker economy and thus cheaper labor. Basically, they could pay the workers there less. And then they would send the finished products back to the mainland US to sell for significantly higher prices because they can get away with charging more here, and the profits were tax-free. The whole Operation Bootstrap and all these corporate tax cuts and other tax advantages did result in an economic boom for Puerto Rico, but as this video excellently puts it, while some benefit was passed on to the citizens, it was mainly designed to benefit US companies, and much of the economic benefit of these companies didn't reach Puerto Ricans. All of that capitalist nonsense is why we are where we are today, with the island having so many economic problems like high poverty, high unemployment, and now gentrification and a housing crisis. The more modern tax provisions like Act 22 show us that we are not learning from mistakes of the past. We're repeating them by continuing to give tax breaks to wealthy investors with the hopes that they will relocate to the island and spur investment and economic growth. But we've seen 50 years ago that doing that doesn't actually spur economic growth in a way that benefits the entirety of the population. So why are we still doing it? The whole philosophy reminds me a lot of the conservative trickle-down economics theory that I talked about in my last video, which is just the idea that giving tax cuts and tax benefits to the wealthy and to corporations will eventually trickle down and benefit the entire population. It's a bunch of BS, sorry, it is. History has shown us over and over that putting in place economic policies that favor the wealthy largely just work to increase class division and the wealth disparity and further destabilize a society. This is part of what's happening to Puerto Rico. The travel-induced gentrification we're seeing today is only building upon the history of exploitation. We can't necessarily stop greedy, selfish real estate developers, but we can control our complicity in it by not buying into the facade of luxury travel and the allure of moving to a beautiful place solely to live cheaply and take advantage of the weaker economy while not providing anything meaningful to that place or the people that live there. Another example of luxury travel gone rogue can be seen in Bali, Indonesia. The Indonesian currency, the rupiah or the IDR, is a weak currency compared to other currencies like the euro or the US dollar, with $1 being equal to about 16,000 IDR. Because of this and the fact that Indonesia has stunning landscapes, many Westerners flock there to take advantage of cheap food, transportation, and luxury accommodations. This article by The Guardian says, foreign arrivals in Bali have surged following the lifting of pandemic restrictions, with 2.9 million foreign visitors entering the island through Bali airport in the first half of this year, according to Indonesia's Statistics Bureau. However, this has also brought problems, including increased traffic, construction, and anger at disrespectful tourists. The island has become particularly popular among digital nomads who often stay for longer periods. Some estimates suggest that there are about 30,000 expats living in Bali. As we know, the influx of foreigners coming from a stronger economy with a stronger currency does end up having negative effects on the local economy, people, and way of life. The rapid development of tourism in Bali does account for a significant portion of economic growth and modernization, and it does provide work opportunities for locals. But while gentrification was initially understood as a positive because it was judged to be able to increase the value of regions, the spread of gentrification turns out to be followed by the phenomenon of the local people being separated from access to the living spaces that have always been a part of their lives. Conflict and social friction between newcomers and the local people has also become ever more frequent. You can go online and easily find dozens of luxury real estate agencies operating in Bali. They sell beautiful private villas to wealthy foreigners looking to have a vacation home or just looking to diversify their investments. They also have luxury properties listed for rent for wealthy foreigners looking to vacation just for a week or two. One such agency is Bali Exception, operated by people who are not Indonesian and catering to people who are not Indonesian. Surprise, surprise. Now, that's not inherently a problem, the fact that they're not Indonesian, but the problem is that these realtors are coming from an economy that's significantly stronger than the Indonesian economy. And so when they go in and buy these properties, invest in these properties, the price range isn't even something feasible for the actual local population. Bali Exception even offers a guide to help these wealthy foreigners discover how to achieve high rental yields or secure your dream home in paradise. They say real estate is the best investment in Bali because Indonesia's evolving property laws and foreign ownership options make investing in Bali's real estate market more accessible and secure. They're sure to mention that luxury villas, in particular, are highly sought after, commanding premium rates due to their location, amenities, and appeal. As I touched on a few moments ago, rising investments by Indonesians and foreigners has resulted in unprecedented property price increases in recent years, reads this article from 2018. It also mentions that a 4-bedroom villa in Barawa, an area on the coast of the Bali island, went from being priced at around 600 to 700,000 US dollars to 1.7 million US dollars in just 6 years. With the dramatic spikes in property prices, obviously comes an affordable housing crisis, where you have locals finding it increasingly difficult to buy land and property in the place that they live and have lived their whole life. An article by the Bali Sun talks about a young woman named Apriani whose dream is to buy land in Batu Balan in Gianyar Regency close to Ubud. Yet land prices have now risen to 300 million IDR for 100 square meters, which is far out of her reach. At 32 years old, Apriani is coming to terms with the fact that both domestic and international investment in Bali is driving property and land prices far beyond the reach of the average earner. To put this into perspective, the average yearly salary for a person in Bali is about 36 million IDR. If land and home prices in some parts of Bali are as high as 300 million IDR, it would take the average local worker almost 10 years to afford, and that's if they were to save up their entire income, which obviously is not possible. Not to mention, the price will continue to go up as the years go on, pushing land and home ownership farther and farther out of reach for the local population. But for an American, 300 million IDR is equal to about 18,000 US dollars, which is relatively affordable for the average American, considering that the average salary here is around $60,000. That's why you have agencies like Bali Exception that cater to Westerners that are looking for cheaper luxury living, while seemingly putting no thought into how their developments and their intrusion into the local housing market is negatively affecting the local population. These agencies play into the fact that the US is experiencing their own housing crisis by encouraging Americans to just relocate for cheaper living, without acknowledging the fact that this relocation is then causing a housing crisis for Indonesians. The same article by the Bali Sun also tells the story of another Balinese hospitality worker named Gede. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And he told reporters how hopes of even renting a property within a 30-minute drive of his workplace were becoming increasingly challenging. He goes on to say, even if I manage to collect the down payment, it probably won't be enough for the installments per month, because in Denpasar itself, the average price has reached 1 billion rupiah for a 100 square meter house. For locals that were able to buy property, like an individual named Ali, who has lived in Ubud for 10 years, he says that over the last few years, he has been approached in his home by foreigners who have wanted to buy his home, despite the private property not being for sale and appearing very much lived in. On top of the affordable housing crisis, there's the environmental destruction that comes with so much unchecked, unregulated property development.
Lingkungan kita sudah mulai banyak ada kerusakan, baik di belakang rumah, di depan rumah, selokan, sungai itu sudah tercemar dengan sampah, dengan pembangunan yang sangat tidak terkontrol, yang hampir 90% tidak memperhatikan.
The island of Bali also has many rice fields, which are slowly and systematically getting destroyed to make way for new developments. According to the same video, every year Bali loses 700 hectares of agricultural land to development. And in 2020, Bali suffered a deficit of around 80,000 tons of rice. Because 60% of all Bali's groundwater supply goes towards different parts of the tourism industry, more than half of the island's rivers have dried up, which then threatens the rice fields and obviously other parts of the natural environment. Because of the growing pressure that tourism is placing on the local infrastructure, environment, and culture, the Indonesian government actually put a moratorium on the construction of new hotels in certain parts of Bali. This means that new hotel construction has been prohibited since last October. There is hope that the development ban will serve to help improve tourist experience of the island and give the province a little breathing room to re-strategize long-term solutions to the questions of growth versus cultural preservation and ecological conservation. While it is an effort to curb the negative effects of over-tourism, a lot of damage has already been done, and there's still a plethora of luxury accommodations for tourists to choose from, and new developments that were already approved prior to the construction ban will still be allowed to finish their development. Ultimately, it's a complicated issue with no easy fix. The age of globalization has made travel-induced gentrification and over-tourism a problem in communities all over the world, and it is our responsibility to be educated about it. So we can't fix it overnight, but what can we do? Stay at locally owned, small-scale hotels and hostels that actually have vested interests in protecting their communities and environments, not large chain resorts and luxury private properties that are concerned with nothing but profits. In Puerto Rico, there are small independently owned inns called paradores. Some of them include Combate Beach Resort, Tres Palmas Villas, and Guanica 1929. A full list is here. Other small boutique hotels that I believe are owned by locals include El Colonial and Casa Botanica. In Bali, some locally owned accommodations are Purana Suites, Teja Prana, Komaneka, and Ananda. There are also homestays, which I believe are run by local families that have built compounds near but separate from their own homes, and these compounds have a few private rooms that they rent out. Some of these are Jiwa's House and Adila Warung and Homestay. Fun fact, Warung is the Indonesian word for a small family-owned business, whether it's a retail or a eatery. So if you're ever traveling there, look for those to eat at and support as opposed to large chains owned by foreign investors. There's also the option to travel and volunteer while staying with a local host family. One company that I know of is called Volunteering Solutions, which offers different volunteering opportunities all over the world if you are looking for ways to travel but also serve and connect with local families and communities. I encourage you to look into ways that you can support small-scale local businesses when you travel wherever you go. In this video, we only discussed 2 places, but the issues of over-tourism, gentrification, foreign investment is happening everywhere. Whether it's Mexico at popular destinations like Cancun or Los Cabos, Costa Rica, Greece, Jamaica, etc. As I said in the beginning of this video, travel is an amazing way to expand your awareness of yourself and of the world, but it takes a heart-centered and mindful effort to travel in a way that is not exploitative. And it takes critical thinking outside of the lens of capitalism-induced consumerism to understand that just because you can afford something doesn't mean you should buy it. We work hard, save up, and spend potentially thousands of dollars for a week on a multi-million-dollar property that caused destruction of the natural environment, displacement of locals, and a classist exclusivity complex. Yes, the private villa is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, and it's right on the beach, and it has a private pool, but how are you gonna go to a country and lay on the private beach, which no one that actually lives there could access because the property developers blocked it off with fences and gates and said, unless you have this much money, you can't get in. How are you gonna go to a country and stay in a private villa or resort and not even really engage with the place or the people that live there at all? That is not travel. That is another form of mindless consumerism parading as the illusion of exploring the world. You're not exploring the world, you're exploiting the world. Well, it's not really you. It's the mega corporations and the ultra wealthy property developers. But in buying into the consumerism of it all, we become complicit in it. So I'm not saying don't travel. What I am saying is think about what you're supporting before you book that trip. Think about who is winning when you stay at that fancy hotel or private villa, and then think about who is losing. Tourism provides jobs, yes. But tourism, when overdone without any critical thought or consideration, also allows for the slower, systematic clearing out of local populations. With the local population goes the culture, the language, the foods, all of which slowly get erased. Not to mention the natural environment, the trees that get torn down, the animals that lose their home and or their life in the process, and the rivers and lakes that get polluted and dried up. Sounds a lot like colonization, but in this form, we see it manifest as little loopholes in the tax codes to benefit the wealthy, digital nomads coming in and building gated private neighborhoods, and consumers mindlessly buying into the allure of luxury travel. These seem like harmless things when one person does it, but when it's done by 100 people, 1,000, thousands, the effects are devastating. As Americans and Westerners in general, we truly need a revolution in the way we think about our consumption. A revolution that makes us understand the weight of our actions from the perspective of the collective, not just from our own individual viewpoint. A revolution that will make us understand that just because you can afford something doesn't mean you should buy it. Rather, we should be really conscious about what systems we're upholding when we use our buying power. Our buying power could literally change the world and show large corporations that we refuse to be complicit in their oppression and destruction. But as of right now, our buying power is mostly just used to uphold and allow for that oppression and destruction. That needs to change urgently. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was informative. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. If you like conversations like this, be sure to check out some of my other videos and hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notifications so you can be notified every time I upload. And I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao!